see Game Boy 20, and he will show you his games that he records. So it's Super Game Boy 20. Remember that. And this is number 2, chapter 2 of the Stepford Wives. We are now gonna see Walter drinking his coffee and winding his watch. Practically nobody winds their watch anymore. Hardly they don't do that.
Because nobody has wind-up watches.
Now Walter's talking about the mental association and stated that he's going to be.
He said I had a good chance of getting in, which I felt good about. I have to admit, though, that there's one room that I don't much care for. It's going to be changed in 6 months or something. What room is that? Well, right now it's strictly mental.
If you realize, Walter has already become a member.
What's that supposed to mean?
Why don't you ever once just tell me the truth? You pretend we decide things together, but it's always you, what you want. You asked me if I wanted to move out here, and I found you'd already been looking for a house. You asked me if I liked this place, and I found you'd already made a down payment. Now you're asking me about the lousy men's association, and it's quite obvious you've already joined. Why bother to ask me at all?
If you realize, Walter didn't tell her anything about moving to Stepford or all this stuff. Surprising that now Walter is going to be in the men's association. We see the housewives of Stepford. These ones we'll get to meet later on. If you notice the Stepford wife in the back of Walter and her wife Joanna, this is one of the Stepford wives, dressed in a proper dress, basically, more Victorian type dress. We see Mrs. Van Sam, and we also see the other Stepford wife in the vehicle.
Okay, Mrs. Sanderson.
Mrs. Sanderson is what her name is. We see the grocery boy telling Mr. Samson and Miss Van Sam, and they hit. Sorry about that word, but usually some movies have words like that. We see her touching her head.
It's nothing really, it's just a surprise.
It wasn't my fault.
Even though she's repeating the same thing, it's just my head, over and over again.
I didn't see the car coming. It came right. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault.
We see Walter and Joanna and the girls. And we see Mrs. Van Sam in her car still. And if you're in the background, the people say, that must be Karen Van Sam, she had an accident.
Get it down here right away in the parking lot. What are you talking about? I'm looking at it. I can see it right now. Get it down here right away. Don't give me a hard time.
We see the store owner telling them they need an ambulance.
My groceries, I'll take them home. Could you call Larson's garage? It's all so silly. It's just my head. It's all so silly. It's just my head.
You know, she repeats it over and over again, the same thing. It's just her head. It's just her head. Listen to what the store guy says.
Get ambulance service better than this anywhere else? 2 hours you wait. And I bet even in Scarsdale it'd take 45 minutes. 6 minutes. Any of the rest of you want to have an make sure you do it right here in Stepford. Okay, it's going on out. Well, I guess that's a friendliest accent I ever saw.
You know, what? We may be new here, but isn't Stepford Hospital that way?
Oh, no, you're wrong. No, you're not wrong. The ambulance went that way.
You notice that Walter and Mrs. Everhart sees that the ambulance has gone the wrong way towards not the hospital, but nobody know where they went. So basically, we'll realize
I'd scare you think she's a wind-up toy.
What is it? Listen, sweetie. Look. He's happy looking. No, that's
the girl, the one that you see, it is the gentleman who plays Mr. Walter Everhart. This is his real daughter who played in this movie with him. So this is his daughter, the one that you can get to meet, the gentleman who plays Everhart. Oh, something about this movie too to tell you is a lot. When they did this movie, the kids that played in this deal went to school in Connecticut, and the director's daughter graduated out of Connecticut high school. She graduated. Some of the houses they rented to when they did the movie. So basically the houses that you see are actually people's houses that they rented. These are rented homes actually. We see Joanna and she looks back to see that Walter is not in the bed. So she goes downstairs. And there she walks slowly, only to see Walter in the middle of the dark sitting there drinking. She asked him if everything was okay. And she tells him it was an initiation, and he tells her it's not a college fraternity.
Okay, the initiation.
We look at him drinking heavily for what reason we don't know.
I wake up, it's the middle of the night. You're sitting here alone drinking. Why are you sitting here? Why did you go to bed? Did anybody say something to you?
There's nothing to be upset about. Everything's fine.
It's not fine. I was worried, Walter. I love you. I expect to be a mind reader.
We see him crying for what reason we don't know. He's thinking, and yet he looks at his wife passionately, if you noticed.
I know I screwed this whole thing up. You didn't want to move. I know.
I'll get over it.
No, we're
That's
not
not
doing
what I
it.
thought.
You understand that?
Let me sleep. We find out why Walter was sitting there in the dark later on. This is Bobby Markowitz. And in the new version, Bobby Markowitz is Jewish. Basically.
Avid Shutterbug ex-Gothamite who misses the noise of an ancient city? Yes. Woo! Hey, boy, am I glad to see you. I'm Bobby. Bobby Marco. That's upward mobility for Markowitz. I'm also an ex-Gothamite who's been living here in Ajax Country for just over a month now. I'm going crazy. You see, Doctor, my problem is that given complete freedom of choice, I don't want to squeeze the goddamn shark. Anyway, I saw your name. Oh, no. Yeah, it's fantastic.
If you realize every time they say something, it's like a commercial, practically.
Stepford. Avid Shutterbug, I knew you were fantastic. You are. Have I seen any of your pictures in magazines? I know I must have. Like Rising. You're terrific. I know you are. Well, ever. I don't know, but I think I do know you. Anyway, but I did my friend. Listen, you want to go and have something to drink? Easy. Okay. Jump here. That is so. Switch. Come on, I just camera my phone. Have you really got film of those things? Yes, I'm very happy. Yeah. Saw your name in it. Whatever made you choose Stepford? I did. Yeah, figures. Dave brought us here because of land values. He's best in bed with the market value. Break into Walter's scotch. Hey, you know something? I'm gonna like you. Yeah. A messy kitchen. Oh my. Of course, it doesn't compare to mine. You haven't got any of those magnificent peanut butter handprints all over your cabinets yet. You're new here, and Stepford wasn't ruined to today. Hello, I see you. Hey, you want a ring thing? I smuggled it over the border. What year is it? 59. A collector's eyes. Ring with scotch. Two things I always carry. Tampons and ring things. And I don't even want to think what that means. I'll tell you. Thanks. I can't figure out this bird. It's like maids have been declared illegal, and the housewife who can this place gets rubber redford for Christmas. And believe me, if that's the prize, I'd enter, but nobody will tell what the contest rules are. Here, cheers. Not to mention that creepy men's association. Yours too? Every night. They wouldn't miss. What do you think they do up there? Watch dirty movies and reminisce about the good old days. What? Good old days? Like those good old days when Playboy used the airbrush. Ring things and scotch. Great combination. Hey, as far as something I'll drink some.
In the 1950s, it wasn't perfect. In the 1950s, the housewife usually was an alcoholic. And some doctors would give her medication to help her calm down the alcohol, not realizing how dangerous they were giving them. The tranquilizers were more dangerous than anything else. When many housewives, when they got bored, sometimes their husband wasn't basically paying attention to them, allowing them to go to become alcoholics.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And prescription medications that they would give them.
Give me a few minutes. We'll be long about 20 minutes.
The 1950 housewife wasn't perfect. But if you ever look at these advertisements in the old magazines, they show the perfect housewife. Her scrubbing the tub, feeding her kids with cookies, making a cake, advertising appliances between the refrigerator, a stove, and the washer and the dryer.
I want to do something.
Here is Walter Everhart. Baby, stop.
I didn't really fix this place
This is
up.
Walter Everhart in the ad.